Oh, you clipped him.
I clipped him.
You clipped him in there. That's fantastic.
Yeah, the Mask of Eyes actually has like a downside to it where you can't see your enemies and it gets kind of annoying. So when you are wearing, but yeah, very Zelda-esque feel. And speaking of looking things up, I can't help but think of something that's kind of long since been not really much of a thing in gaming. It's not something that we really use anymore, thanks to the advent of the internet, and that's strategy guides. You know,
Oh my god.
we still have strategy guides that are online, FAQs, walkthroughs. You could just watch someone play the game now, you know, for free. But back in the day, one of my favorite things to do was like, oh, I really like this game. I want to learn more about it. I'm going to buy this book that's actually more of a magazine, and it's going to show me, here are all the secrets. Here's all the stuff that you can unlock. You know, here's things that you never would have figured out on your own inside this book. And I was just like, I was obsessed with that idea. I really like strategy guides back in the day. So I would kill for like a yeast strategy guide if one exists, but
It's funny you mentioned strategy guides. When I was in Vegas, one of the stores, actually both of the game stores that I went to, had old strategy guides. I found an old Crash Bandicoot 2 strategy guide and I almost bought it. But the thing is, like, what am I going to do with it? Like you said, they're just not as useful anymore because you can just look up whatever it is you need at any given moment. Why clutter up your space with a old magazine / book for something that, you know, you pay to have access to every month?
I mean,
Like, we pay for internet and shit.
I'm not of that mind because as far as I'm concerned, like, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, like, I like collecting things that have physical, there's like a physical component to it. You know, digital games are great and convenient, but, you know, I also really like the idea of having a physical copy, like a case with it, a manual.
Yep.
Strategy guides, you know, I like that aspect to it. And then I could just put it on my shelf and it's there. Like, I own it forever. It's not just on this digital marketplace that might disappear one day.
No, the funny thing is, I agree with you there, but also I don't have a lot of space. So that's why, like, you know, if I had like my own space, my own apartment, my own like spot where I can show this sort of stuff off, absolutely 100% I would have bought it, but I don't have that. I have one bookshelf that's literally cluttered with games and cards and like these little figures that I have. Like, I have no space for anything else. But no, yeah, I also like my stuff physical. You kidding me? I want my games physical. I want I would like physical like manuals and shit. Like, I miss those when it comes to gaming. Sometimes when I was a kid, I used to read manuals and literally learn stuff about a game that I never knew, that I would have never found out otherwise. Especially back in the PS1 days. Sometimes there's lore for that game in the manual, and you're supposed to read through it to fully understand it. Like, especially when it comes to Gex. I had no idea Gex had this whole lore about it beforehand. I read through the manual online, actually, because I have Gex for the PS3. They gave us a digital manual. I read through it and I'm like, oh, so like there's this whole story behind it. Like, even the cutscene doesn't tell you everything.
Speaking of Rewind and the discussion that we're having, remember Be Kind Rewind? You remember VHS tapes and Blockbuster?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm happy to leave VHS tapes where they are in history.
A lot of people are.
Because in all honesty, like, I was a kid that liked rewatching movies that he liked. All right, I must have watched Good Burger like a couple dozen times back when I was a kid. Homeward Bound, that movie about the two dogs and the cat that get lost and try to find their way back to their family. That, I love that movie. I watched it too many times. What else? Freaking old episodes of Pokemon and Digimon on VHS. I rewatched those like crazy. But the problem is that anytime you want to go watch it again, you got to rewind that shit and wait a good 2-3 minutes in order to, watch. Doesn't sound like too much, but when you want to watch something, you kind of want to do it now, not have to wait.
Yeah, that's one thing. There's a lot of conveniences that have been bestowed upon us with the advent of better, newer, cutting-edge technologies. But I still can't help but feel a little bit nostalgic for stuff like that.
Oh, same.
Especially strategy guides. For me, I can agree with you on the VHS thing. VHS tapes they're just not as good. It's definitely better for them to be left in the past. But stuff like looking things up online for strategy guides, writing down cheat codes on a piece of paper so you don't forget them.
GTA days, man. I know what you're talking about.
Or The Sims. I miss that. I miss that time. It was a simpler time. Things were very straightforward. You go on the website, you put the cheat code down. You get 10,000 simoleons, whatever.
You're not wrong. Again, I was just talking earlier about missing manuals for games and shit. Like, I understand it saves money not having to print stuff and whatnot, but it was still nice to have something physical to be like, hey, I can refer to this whenever I need to, even though, again, we do have the internet. And it's funny because I've only ever had a couple like gaming magazines or gaming manuals in my game strategy guides in my life. Like, I have our buddy Skip had given me the official guide for Soul Calibur 5.
Nice.
And I remember he gave it to me because he's like, yo, I know you like Soul Calibur, you want to get better at it. I don't need this, so you have it. So I still have it, as a matter of fact. I still have it in my collection. It's a big old thick book too. It's a hardcover. Mm-hmm. And the illustrations in there are amazing. Some of the stuff for the characters, you're not going to know unless you look it up. So that's nice. And when I used to live in a different place in the Bronx, someone wasn't necessarily throwing out, but was giving away a strategy guide for Soul Calibur 3. And I also still have that in my collection.
Nice.
So again, I never ended up buying it, but I got that book in like 2012. Actually, more like 2011. That's when I found it, when it was like being given away. And I was just like, oh my god, I could have really used this back in the day when Soul Calibur 3 was still new. Oh my god. And again, illustrations, amazing. Tidbits, also great. You can make your own characters, and they give you some tidbits for that too.
Yeah. I think the only strategy guide that I have is actually for my favorite game of all time, Majora's Mask. And that game, you definitely want a strategy guide for. Just because of the way it is, if I had a video game ever introduce me to the concept of it would have been impossible without this, it was definitely Majora's Mask. Because Majora's Mask, you have, I think it's like 30 or like 35 masks or something like that. You have to go through all of these ridiculous quests, most of which are timed. So if you miss the time for it, you are locked out. You have to start all the way from the beginning on a fresh reset of the time, because it's a game where it only takes place over 72 hours, but you keep resetting time and going back. So in order to get all the masks, you would have to basically have to have like a ridiculous amount of luck. No one would ever possibly get Majora's Mask 100% on their first try. You would have to just look it up. There'd be no other way to do it. So yeah, that one is definitely very near and dear to me, and I still have it somewhere, but I use the ever-loving crap out of it.
I never really needed a strategy guide. There were games where I did in fact need help, but again, early 2000s, GameFAQs was still a thing. It still existed back then, kids. And I would use that as a child when I needed help for certain games, especially Digimon World 3. I needed help getting through that game because I had no idea what to do. It was a cryptic JRPG. So I remember looking up information. Oh, go over here, talk to this person, go over there and do that. And I'm just like, perfect, because I would have never known otherwise.
Well, this is why we should read. Wait, did I save? Are you still there?
Sure, why? What happened?
Okay, so when we gave the thing to the Roo, we gave the fruit to the little Roo guy, the Rhoda fruit, he taught us a song, or kind of made Yunica remember the song, I guess, because it was a song that she remembered. And by playing that song on that harmonica in these kind of rooms, you can actually dispel all the bad, noxious, poisonous gases. So if we had just been a little bit less trigger happy on the button, we could have just saw that was there. And now we can move on.
Yeah, dude, I'm gonna be honest. That sounds like someone's like fever dream. Like, yeah, dude, I gave this animal this fruit, and then my dream it was all like, yeah, man, you remember that? Remember that song? Like that cool song you used to play on your what's that thing? A harmonica? Yeah, like, what if you played in a poison room? What do you think that'll do? Yeah, maybe I'll try that, brah. And then I did it in the dream, yeah. And I wasn't poisoned anymore, man. It was rad. Sorry, man. That's what it seems like.
I mean, that seems right up your alley because you like Bill and Ted, so I don't see why you're complaining about it.
Excellent.
I mean, again, we're coming back to talking about where these series come from. You know, if you look back at a game like Zelda or something, like old Zelda, it was like full of stuff like that, you know? It's I guess like maybe not suspension of disbelief because we're talking about a fantasy universe, but it's kind of having like a sense of like whimsy, I guess, or just having a sense of like, you know, getting lost into the world. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, the little Roo reminded you of like, oh hey, here's an option that you can, you know, try. Maybe that'll help you get past this challenge this obstacle that you find yourself currently. It's like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I just don't see it the same way, but I'm glad that we figured it out. Just once again, when you skip dialogue, you kind of forget stuff. And also, we haven't played this in a while. I think a couple chapters back, we got that harmonica when we met one of the goddesses. I think we got the harmonica like 2 chapters ago or something. So maybe it would have been a little bit more fresh on our mind. Like, oh, we haven't used this yet. Maybe now's the time to use it.
You gotta heal, dude. You're at 4 health. Now you should probably run. Like, go back to where the Roo was. Maybe you can like grab a.
No, bad idea.
Why?
If I go to the Roo, I think there's like a 40 HP in there.
Makes no sense. You gotta go to the back. You gotta go back to the statue then.
Yeah, you gotta go back to the statue. If I went to the Roo room and then I went out, all the enemies would respawn. Then I would be really screwed. But no, I think yeah, like not like skipping. I think if we were still playing this game on the regular, because once again, I think it was like maybe even 2022 the last time we did a session and recorded an episode of Ys, but the harmonica may have been a little more fresh on our mind because we hadn't used it at that point. So the connection would have been, oh, music. Maybe we should use the harmonica, but you know, you can't change the fact that sometimes we record these things in really long breaks. Like it's just kind of the way that we do it.
It's not because we want to, everyone. It just ends up being that way. We got busy adult lives, unfortunately.
It sucks because before we got into YouTube, I was kind of like all starry-eyed like a lot of other people are, but I guess the idea was like, oh, you just sit around and play games with your friend and you finish the game and then you just have tons of stuff to edit, and it's like finishing games takes a long ass time.
It does.
Then it goes from, well, when we first started doing this channel, we only had like 1 or 2 playthroughs, if that. Eventually we moved on to playthroughs, but we only had like a few games first. But now it's at this point where we have like multiple projects, and we do have a couple projects like lined up.
Yeah, one that we've been mulling over and also pushing back, and also trying not to push back, and then working together and trying to get it out. It's tough to balance it all, really.
Yep. Let's see. Well, I do like this aspect of these games. I think you see, I don't really remember much in the newer ones, but there's kind of like select enemies. There's a barrier preventing you from going where you want to go. And there's like a select group of enemies that are highlighted. That's basically like, if you kill these guys, then the barrier will be lifted. I like those puzzles, or I guess if you could call it a puzzle. I like that aspect of these games. Okay, cool. So, I think I kind of explained it, but there's like 6 pieces of armor for like 2 categories in this game, and then you just progressively get each one. You can also upgrade them individually. They all say level 1 because we have not been effective at upgrading the individual pieces. But when you get the next one, it's the strongest version of it anyway, so... I feel like there's something.
So what do the boots do?
Those are just for defense. It's just a defensive item, yeah. You know, while we're talking about like Ys history and stuff, the original Ys game was a lot different. It actually, the Ys series has like, I think 3 different systems is what they call it. And the original game had something called the bump system. That's how combat worked. It wasn't like a traditional like turn-based RPG like a lot of them were back then. I guess they were trying to do something a little bit different. Essentially what you did was you would walk into the enemy and bump them, and that was considered an attack. And I know it sounds really weird, because it is, trust me, I've played it. Depending on like how you attack them, you could optimize how much damage you do, like from which angle you kind of hit them, and it was strange. It was called the bump system. Didn't really work much like this, but sometimes I look at the top-down Ys games from like the sort of like more distant isometric perspective, and I kind of can't help but think of what it would be like if they released another game in the bump system style. They never will. I know they never will, unless it's some like April Fool's joke where they fully commit. But yeah, I can't help but think of the bump system sometimes, and where this game came from, the origin of this series, if you will.
So you said there are 3 main ones. What are the other 2?
Well, it's been a while since I've really been kind of like a Ys enthusiast, where I'm just like playing the games all the way. Like I marathoned them at one point, but essentially the newest like iteration of it, I guess, is its own system, and what we're playing now is kind of like what followed the bump system. The bump system kind of went away, and then we had, to some degree of variance, like with the mechanics, what we're doing right now, essentially. I don't remember what the official, like what this system would be called, but
I would just call it top-down.
Yeah. For anyone that's wondering, if anyone that wants like actual facts, so you could go check out a website called Digital Emelas. It's kind of just like fans coming together to catalog a bunch of information, a lot of resources about Ys. What's great about that website is that a lot of time people coming to any RPG will, for the first time, will have a difficulty of like, oh, well, there's so many of them, which one should I start with? That website gives you like 3 different options for, how you should play this series as a first timer. And I really like that. I think most JRPGs should kind of have that. It gives you like, well, if you want to just follow the story, play this way. If you're only concerned about gameplay, play this way, or, and so forth. So they'll kind of explain a lot of stuff to you. They'll have more information about the bump system and whatnot. But pretty much, Ys has been such a long-running series that And they've remade a couple of them. I mentioned that earlier, but like some of the older games were on like the Famicom, so because of that, you know, really antiquated system, they wanted to bring them to new platforms, and that's how we got like Memories of Calcutta is a remake of 4. It came out on it was exclusive on the PlayStation Vita. It's not exclusive anymore. And Ys 3 was remade. Ys 1 and 2 were kind of remade, I think. To my knowledge, the only one that remains untouched is Ys 5. It hasn't even been localized, so it just doesn't exist outside of the West.
Outside of Japan, you mean?
Outside of Japan, outside of the East. That's what I said.
There you go. No, you said the West. Unless you meant to say West, which would still be incorrect.
West.
Can't you jump onto that?
No, the jump's not as high. Oh, and yeah, so another thing with the series is that some of them are like they allow you to jump in the game, and some of them do not allow you to jump in the game, and it kind of becomes like this. Depending on which game you play, it might appeal a little bit less for you because they've like taken out the platforming, or like the platforming hasn't really been fleshed out as much in those games, and it's something I can't help but think about. Even in Memories of Calcutta, which was my introduction to the series and my personal favorite, I don't believe that you could jump in Memories of Calcutta. Yeah, so I don't know if you want
odd.
jumping in your JRPG platformer game, but some of these games don't have it. God, I am trying to just not get murdered.
Gotta make it back to a statue there, pumpkin.
You know, that's a good point. I just teleport.
Ah.
Fortunately, that'll put us a little bit behind. We'll be back at the Devil's Corridor, but that's gonna do it for the episode anyway. So we might as well save it off here. Once again, the next time we pick up, we'll have to run through the poisonous gas room, sans poisonous gas, because we've solved it. But yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed it. This has been episode 11 of our Ys Origin playthrough. We're back in full swing playing this playthrough alongside River City Girls 2, alongside Digimon. And yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed the episode.
That's right. If you guys did enjoy this, please make sure to slap the like button, mash the subscribe button. Let us know down in the comments below. Do you like platforming in your JRPGs? I do.
I do too.
But anyway, once again, everyone, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.